Good morning. I'm not sure you're audible yet. Are you on? Yeah, I want to be sure we can be heard. No, not on yet. How about now?
Good morning.
No? Okay, try again.
Good morning, Mr.
There
Chairman.
we go.
Great honor to be here and privilege, sir.
Yeah.
I'm here to present AB 2521, which is established independent auditing practices for trial courts and the Administrative Office of the Courts. The AOC currently may conduct internal audits and reviews of trial courts according to the AOC. They, in fact, perform those once every 4 years. This bill would require and set up mandates for the AOC to be audited or for the trial courts or the AOC to undergo regular and comprehensive financial audits. AB 2521 will simply establish independent audits of trial courts and the AOC. It's a transparency bill, Mr. Chairman. I want to make sure that funds are properly administered in the courts, and an independent audit is the best way to assure that. Respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tirico. Do you have witnesses here in support?
My witness is running late, Mr. Chairman, but we're ready to proceed.
Okay, are there witnesses here in opposition? Oh, actually, there is a witness in one position or the other. We'll find out soon which. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Connie Valentine from California Protective Parents Association. I'm here on behalf of the Center for Judicial Excellence and for California Protective Parents Association. As an officer of a nonprofit, as a taxpayer, and as a retired state employee, I believe that outside audits are imperative to ensure full integrity and good government. It's not reasonable to expect any organization, regardless of its honesty, to perform a completely neutral review of its own finances, particularly of nearly $4 billion per year. So I strongly endorse this bill.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Other witnesses, I take it, are you in support?
I am.
All right. Other witnesses in support?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jim Cassidy with the California Court Reporters Association, we're in support.
Thank you very much. Others in support? Are there witnesses here in opposition to the measure? Good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members. Donna Hershkowitz on behalf of the Judicial Council. I'd say that we're sort of in that middle category.
You're a tweener.
We're a tweener. I've got with me here John Jednick, the manager of our internal audit services at the Administrative Office of the Courts, who I'll turn to in just a moment. The Judicial Council is opposed to this bill unless funded, and that's not so much a concern for this committee. We do also have some concerns just about the lack of clarity of the scope of the audit that's set forth in the bill. The Judicial Council currently conducts comprehensive audits of the trial courts every 4 years, and our goal is to shorten that cycle to every 3 years. The comprehensive audits that we do include a review of internal controls and transactions related to financial statements of the courts, also operational and compliance reviews for compliance with mandatory requirements of the rules of court, statutes, trial court financial policies and procedures manual, and other high and medium risk financial operational areas. As I said, our goal is to reduce that to every 3 years. However, we don't currently have the necessary resources to do so. We have submitted budget change proposals for the past couple of years to the legislature requesting additional positions to be able to shorten that audit cycle, but have not been successful. AB 2521, on the other hand, proposes to audit the AOC annually. As we've indicated in our letter to members of the committee, the Judicial Council is absolutely not opposed to the objectives of this bill. We just want to get some clarity on the scope of the audits. The type of comprehensive audits that we do every 4 years, that we're hoping to do every 3 years, would be excessive and unduly burdensome on an annual basis. The sponsors in describing this bill repeatedly have talked about how counties and cities and local school districts are audited on an annual basis. The types of audits that they typically undergo are generally referred to as financial statement opinion audits. To the extent that that's what this bill is trying to ask the AOC and the trial courts to undergo, we would have absolutely no objection to that. To the extent that the scope of the audits would require the controller to be doing extensive field work in the courts for 6 weeks, a couple of months, or otherwise have a significant impact on trial court staff resources, then we would think that that annual audits would be unduly burdensome and disruptive, especially in this time with limited staff resources. We look forward, as the bill moves forward, to working with the author, committee staff, and the sponsor on clarifying what the scope of those audits are.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Other witnesses either in this netherworld occupied by the AOC or in opposition? All right, seeing none, questions or comments? Oh, yes. Would you like to testify?
Well, just to expand on what Ms. Herskowitz said, to talk about the scope issue.
State your name for the record, please.
My name is John Judnick. I'm the manager of Internal Audit Services at the Administrative Office of the Courts. To expand on what Ms. Herskowitz said, my short comment will talk about the scope impact on the Superior Courts of California. And currently, as she said, there are a number of audits being performed, especially by my unit of the courts. And this, if on a regular basis, there could be a significant impact on the courts in terms of their fiscal resources and the time of staff. And that's really a major concern of the AOC. The types of audits that she was talking about have different impacts. A financial audit, an opinion audit, is an opinion on the financial statements of the court. There are also financial audits, component audits, that Internal Audit Services does on a fairly regular basis, although we're hoping to get down to 3 years from the 4 years. There's also performance audits, which are operational audits, compliance audits, and program audits, which Internal Audit Services performs at the courts. And those are fairly intrusive and at a very detailed level. Internal Audit Services complements a financial statement opinion audit, and that's why we're pretty much of the opinion that we're not opposed to this bill, but we're looking at the funding issue. Currently, Internal Audit Services also performs consulting work at the various courts. During this last year, we performed work with concerning the Fresno Sheriff Billings, the Placer Executive Compensation, and the San Mateo budgeting procedures. Our cycle, as we said, is a 4-year audit cycle, which encompasses, as Ms. Herskowitz said, a comprehensive review of the finances of the court, the compliance issues concerning laws, rules, regulations, California rules of court, and policies and procedures from industry standards. We also primarily look at the control environment of the court to ensure that the courts are safeguarding the assets and properly accounting for and reporting all the assets. At a detailed level, that's why Internal Audit Services or the internal audit function in any organization, be it private or public, is very critical and complementary to a financial statement opinion audit.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Other witnesses here in opposition? All right, seeing none, questions or comments from members of the committee?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Yes.
My staff's been working with your committee staff on a series of amendments. We're ready to adopt those as author's amendments
I was
today.
going to ask if that was the case.
We're ready, prepared to do that, sir.
Thank you very much. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Okay, we do not yet have a quorum, Mr. Tirico, but we're inches away. So thank you very much. And as to the comments from the AOC, I think that the comment well states the fact that my staff is also committed to continuing to work with the author and opposition to assure there's clarity in the legislation.
We're committed to that as well, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tirico. Thank you for your testimony and presentation. Let us proceed next to Mr. Chesborough, who is here on item number 12, AB 2664.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members.
Good morning. Please proceed.
The State Lands Commission often has to enter into costly litigation to combat persons or entities building structures on state lands without the proper permits or out of compliance with those permits. The Commission's only form of recourse under current law is to sue the perpetrator. Many of these structures actually impede the public's access to state lands. Examples include building fences into lakes or even across state parks. The bill would allow the State Lands Commission to charge administrative penalties similar to other states, such as New York, Oregon, Texas, and Washington. The penalty is to be no more than $1,000 per day or no more than 60% of the fair market rent for the land for each day a permit is violated. There are safeguards included within the bill that allow for a hearing within 30 days of a printed notice and a 6-month period of amnesty to allow the perpetrators to apply for a lease without being penalized. This bill passed out of Natural Resources with no votes. It's sponsored by the State Lands Commission, and I would just ask for your aye vote.
Mr. Chesborough, before we continue, we now have a quorum. Let's establish it. Please call the roll.
Fear.
Here.
Tran. Here. Brownlee. Evans. Hagman. Here. Jones. Knight. Here. Swanson.
Present.
Monning.
Here.
Nava.
Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar? Is there a second?
Second.
Call the roll.
Fuhr.
Aye.
Fuhr, aye. Tran.
Aye.
Tran, aye. Brownlee. Evans. Hagman. Hagman, aye. Jones. Knight. Knight, aye. Swanson.
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Monning.
Aye.
Monning, aye. Nava.
Mr. Chesbro, thank you for your patience in this time of multiple commitments. Getting a quorum and getting things done is
It
imperative.
is what it is.
Yes. So, Mr. Chesbro, returning to your bill, are the witnesses here in support?
Mr. Chair and committee members. My name is Mario DiBernardo, and I'm here on behalf of the California State Lands Commission in support of this bill. I respectfully request that you support this bill since it will help ensure the state is paid the rent that it is due, prevent people from blocking off access to public trust lands, and save the state money and legal services. Thank you.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support? Mr. Chesbro notes there's no noted opposition. Are there witnesses here in opposition? Seeing none, members of the committee, questions or comments for Mr. Chesbro? It's been moved. Is it seconded? Bill's been moved and seconded. There are no questions or comments. Members of the committee, Mr. Chesbro, do you wish to close?
I just thank you for your kind consideration, Mr. Chairman and members.
Thank you very much. It's been moved and seconded. Call the roll.
Fuhr.
Aye.
Fuhr, aye. Tran.
Aye.
Tran, aye. Brownlee. Evans. Hagman. Hagman, aye. Jones. Knight. Knight, aye. Swanson. Swanson, aye. Monning. Monning, aye. Nava.
Congratulations, Mr. Chesbro. That bill is out. We'll hear from Mr. Hernandez now, who is here on item number 8, AB 2047, and then item 13, AB 2693. Mr. Hernandez, Dr. Hernandez.
Thank
Welcome.
you, Mr. Chair. And which one would you like me to present first? 2040?
Why don't you go ahead? I'll tell you what. Why don't we do 2695 first? That should
Okay.
be very quick, which is item number 13.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present this bill, which would authorize the creation of the California Nursery Products Commission. In every one of our districts, we have nurseries or garden centers, which we as our constituents enjoy year-round for flowers, plants, vegetables, and anything else for the garden. Nursery products to supply the garden center generates more than $2 billion in farm gate revenue and employ thousands of individuals. The producers represent the third largest agricultural commodity in our state. This bill would allow nursery producers to create a commission for the purposes of conducting research, education, and outreach for the benefit of the industry. Like the more than 20 other commissions, this one would take only effect after a vote of the producers. There is no opposition to the bill, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote, and I have with me individuals who would like to testify on behalf of the bill, Mr. Chair, as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hernandez. First witness in support.
Robert Dolezal for the California Association of Nurseries and Garden Centers. Chairman Fuhr and honorable members, we urge your aye vote on AB 2695 to form this commission where the foundation of California's crop agriculture, producing seeds, starts, transplants, and orchard trees that become the crops that are the cornerstone of the nation's food supply. Our nursery industry needs a unifying voice that we can only have through authorizing the establishment of a California Nursery Producers Commission. We thank you for your aye vote today.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Other witnesses in support? Are the witnesses here in opposition? Questions or comments from colleagues on the committee?
One question,
Mr. Tran.
I understand the content of the bill. The trade associations has been in existence since 1911, and I'm wondering what is the rationale for the commission, whereas the trade association, the membership can do probably most of, if not all of the activities that the commission is asking for.
Yes, Mr. Tran, the primary reason for this is that a decreasing number, as the industry becomes more stratified, they're highly independent producers, a large number of large producers, about 600, and then the remaining 10,000 or so are smaller producers. And the challenge we have is that this is a situation that's common to any trade association. Fewer and fewer people want to support the work of advocacy, outreach, education, research, and so on. And we're having an increasingly difficult time raising the funds necessary to do an adequate job of that. As the number 2 commodity in the state of California, when you combine our retail and wholesale sales, we absolutely believe that the agenda we have requires a commission to provide a stable source of funding for that activity.
Thank you, Mr. Tran. Thank you for the response. Other questions or comments, members of the committee? All right. Do we have, well, before we go anything further, Dr. Hernandez, do you wish to close on the bill?
Thank you for your time, and respectfully ask for your aye vote, Mr. Chair.
All right. Now, the bill has been moved. Do we have we have actually lost a quorum. No, we have a quorum again. Let's see, 1, 2, 3. Yes, we do. Very good. So it's been moved. Is there a second? Second. All right. The bill's been moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Fuhr?
Aye.
Fuhr, aye. Tran?
Aye.
Tran, aye. Brownlee? Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Hagman? Jones? Knight? Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Nava? Nava, aye.
The bill is out. Congratulations, Dr. Hernandez. Let's proceed to your second item, which is item number 8, AB 2047.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Again, I'd like to first thank the chair as well as the staff for working with my office and helping draft some of the amendments recommended by your consultant. This bill is a bill that ensures that the legislature continues to strive towards racial and social equality in our higher education institutions. As you know, current law declares the legislature's intent that the University of California and the California State University enroll a student that meets high academic standards and reflects the cultural, racial, geographic, economic, and social diversity of the state of California. However, it's very clear that our universities do not represent the diversity of our population. The education gap continues to grow as a higher percentage of underrepresented minority students today are USC and CSU eligible, but the percentage of those admitted has dropped or fluctuated to numbers similar to that of 1995. This bill attempts to remedy the issue by clarifying that the University of California and the California State University may consider, let me restate that, may consider cultural, race, gender, ethnicity, national origin, geographic origin, and household income, along with other relative factors in undergraduate and graduate admissions if and when the university, campus, college, or school or program is attempting to obtain an educational benefit through the recruitment of a diverse student body. The bill clarifies that our public universities are permitted to consider these entities in their admissions process. And again, I must restate consider. Key language in the bill state that these factors may be utilized to the extent permitted by the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution to develop the most diverse bodies of qualified students as well that will help California be more competitive. I must stress that the intent of this legislation is not to have universities implement quota systems or discriminatory admission systems, but instead to consider these race and gender in admission to enhance the state's dedication to enrollment of qualified students for these underrepresented groups. I am extremely concerned with the issue of access for underrepresented populations in the state of California, with ongoing cuts occurring system-wide to public universities are underrepresented, and the most vulnerable populations will increasingly encounter limited access to higher education. I hope for your consideration and support. I respectfully ask for your aye vote. I have individuals here who would like to testify on behalf of the bill, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak this morning.
Dr. Hernandez, thank you very much. First witness in support.
Good morning, Chair Fuhrer and committee members. Julia Blair with the California Post-Secondary Education Commission in support of AB 2047. CPEC supports allowing college and university admissions officials to help develop and maintain the most diverse and representative body of qualified students that they can. The educational and societal gains associated with enrolling a mix of students from diverse backgrounds will help California be more competitive in the diverse world market. We ask for your support of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next witness in support.
Tiffany Mock on behalf of the ACLU. We've reviewed the bill and we support it.
Thank you. Others in support.
Beth McGovern on behalf of the California Commission on the Status of Women. We are in strong support of the bill. Thank you.
Others in support. Are there any witnesses here in opposition to the bill? That would be you. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you, Chairman Fuhrer. My name is Diane Schachterly. I'm with the American Civil Rights Coalition, and the issue that we have with this bill is legal. We would like to have a wonderful, diverse student body as well. We have no objection to geographical family income. Those are all factors that cross all racial and gender lines and make it fair. The problem that we have is that the 14th Amendment is the minimum standard set at the federal level. The people of California have chosen to enhance the equal protection here in California with Proposition 209. And so the consideration or use of race or gender is absolutely forbidden at the constitutional level here in California. It's often referred to the Grutter decision that you may consider race or use race to the amount that is allowed in the Grutter decision. Even Justice O'Connor, when she wrote the Grutter opinion, knew that California would not be subject to that. In her decision, she wrote, as the experience in Texas, Florida, and California demonstrates, public universities have ample race-neutral means to achieve objectives. She knew that California would not be subject to the Grutter decision because we have the enhanced protection of Proposition 209. We would support the bill if they removed race and gender from it and used economic, socioeconomic, geographical. Those are all wonderful tools to get a diverse student body. But as it stands, with race and gender, it cannot be considered without giving a preference. It's just not possible. It just isn't possible. And all of the case law says that this will be struck down. And in a very similar form, it was vetoed by the governor in 2004. And so we believe that it will be struck down again, and we will challenge it if it goes through. So we respectfully ask you to reconsider the legalities, the technical legalities in this bill.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there other witnesses here in opposition to the bill? Seeing none, questions or comments from members of the committee? The bill's been moved. Is there a second? Okay. Dr. Hernandez, seeing no questions or comments, do you wish to close?
I respectfully ask for your aye vote, Mr. Chair and members, and thank you for the time.
Okay. Thank you. I will make a comment, and that is the decision to which the opposition refers does say that the narrowly tailored use of race in admissions decisions to further a compelling state interest in obtaining the educational benefits that flow from a diverse student body is permitted. No state proposition can trump the federal Constitution. Prop 209 itself contemplates that relationship. I respectfully would note, with respect to the comments made by the opposition, that even the language invoked by the opposition here is not the holding of that court case. It is, if anything, dicta. Now, call the roll.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Tran?
No.
Tran, no. Brownlee? Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Hagman? Jones? Knight? No. Knight, no. Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Nava?
Okay, that bill has 4 votes and needs 2 more, Dr. Hernandez. Oh,
Nava, aye.
Mr. Nava is aye, so it was 1 vote short.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll place it on call. Thank you for the presentation, for the testimony. And now let's proceed to Ms. Strickland, who is here on item number 6, AB 1993. She's also a joint author of item 4, but my bet is that we're going to wait for Ms. Lowenthal on that one. Is that correct? All right, Ms. Strickland, welcome. AB 1993, item 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We will be taking the committee amendments as authors' amendments.
Thank you.
Bring to you today Assembly Bill 1993. We make important, far-reaching decisions every day as members of this legislature that affect millions of Californians. A lot of times these decisions are based on reports that are submitted to us by various state agencies and departments. We as the legislature should be able to count on these reports as true, accurate, and complete. My bill seeks to ensure that this is the case in order to reach the best possible policy decisions for all Californians. Specifically, AB 1993 requires that written reports to the legislature include a statement signed by the head of the agency or department that the contents of the report are true, accurate, and complete to the best of his or her knowledge. Taxpayers deserve accountability and transparency from officials that they appoint to manage public funds, and the legislature and local governments deserve accurate information to make the best decisions possible. I'd ask for your aye vote.
Thank you very much, Ms. Strickland. Witnesses in support of your measure? Are there witnesses here in opposition to the measure? Are there members of the committee with questions or comments for Ms. Strickland on the bill? Ms. Strickland, I think this will be the height of efficiency this morning. Do you wish to close?
I'd ask for your aye vote.
Is there a motion on the bill? Has it been seconded? It's been moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Fuhr?
Aye.
Fuhr, aye. Tran?
Aye.
Tran, aye. Brownlee? Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Hagman? Jones? Knight? Knight, aye. Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Nava? Nava, aye.
That bill is out, Ms. Strickland. Congratulations.
Chair.
Thank you very much. All right. Mr. Berryhill is here on item number 7, AB 2036. You also have item number 9, AB 2469. Let's proceed in order. Item 2036, item number 7.
Thanks, and good morning to everybody.
Good morning.
I want to thank the chair and members for hearing this today. I bring to you AB 2036. Subcontractors often serve lawsuits to foreclose stop notices on public agencies as a sort of squeaky wheel to assure prompt payment. Until recently, public agencies have routinely tendered the defense of any such lawsuits on those stop notices to the prime contractor, who then usually works out a settlement with the subcontractor. Although there are no costs generated by a public agency since it tenders the defense to the prime contractors, some outside counsels to certain public agencies have been charging prime contractors attorney fees. My bill is intended to clear up this misunderstanding, which has allowed these outside counsels to charge prime contractors for attorney fees that should never have been incurred in the first place. I'm offering an amendment today that will remove all of the opposition of which I'm aware of. With me today is Phil Vermillion, representing the sponsor, who's here to help answer any questions.
Okay. So, Mr. Berryhill, you're accepting as the author's amendment that which is proposed on page 3 of the committee analysis, the language with regard to section 3186. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much. First witness in support.
Mr. Chair, Phil Vermeulen, representing the sponsors. I think the analysis is very well written and self-explanatory. I'm here to answer any questions you may have, and I urge your aye vote. Thank you.
You know that flattery is the most important element in the committee discussions. Please, next witness.
And Mr. Chair, Scott Governor, on behalf of the Construction Employers Association, I concur with Mr. Vermeulen and support the bill.
Okay, it's all over the place. Go ahead, next.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members. Julianne Broyles here on behalf of Associated Builders and Contractors of California. We think this is a needed clarification. Ask for your aye vote, and yes, the committee did a very good job on the analysis.
Okay. Does anybody wish to critique the committee analysis or oppose the bill? Opposition is making its way forward. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members. Tom Duffy for the Coalition for Adequate School Housing. We had difficulty with this same provision last year in the Fuentes measure that you passed out. I appreciate your staff trying to work with us. We still are in opposition. And the reason for that opposition is that a school district, if it must tender to the contractor, it loses control of what is happening with those payments to the subcontractors. It doesn't mean that the school district is out of any harm's way. If going back to the Kumis decision, an appellate court decision from 1985, there's a recognition that an attorney cannot represent two parties that are in a contractual relationship. And so we continue to object to this bill because we believe that this could do harm to school districts and other public agencies. So we respectfully oppose this, Mr. Berryhill.
Eric Bakke with the Los Angeles Unified School District. We're a little late to the game on this one, so I apologize for not getting with your office earlier. We are to and opposed for very much the same reasons as we were last year, but we do look forward to continue to talk and work with your office. I think there's been a shift in the pendulum with regards to that defense, and we think that we can strike some balance if we continue to talk.
Thank you very much. Other witnesses in opposition? Are there questions or comments, members of the committee? As Mr. Berryhill pointed out, the committee members who were here last year will recall this provision from a prior piece of legislation. I will say, in response to the opposition, understand the rather technical point regarding Kumis Council, but you could always have Kumis Council. And the bill need not contemplate that. That's already a practice employed and has been employed for, I don't know, 15 or 20 years. If you go ahead, sure.
I agree, and the school district would certainly incur additional costs in doing that.
That's correct. No, that is correct. And I think it's fair that we'll continue as a staff and committee to be available to consult, to try to work with the author and you to, if there are further elements that can technically be resolved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just, we're definitely committed to continuing to work on this and try to address the concerns of the schools in regard to this. So we will move forward.
Because the comment is well taken.
Yeah,
always,
absolutely.
The point about Kumis Council is right, and the point that it costs money is also correct.
Absolutely.
All right. Questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Berryhill, wish to close?
Yeah, well, I just, in closing, just want to ask for your strong consideration and an aye vote. Thank
Okay. Call the roll, please.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Tran? Tran, aye. Brownlee? Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Hagman? Jones? Knight? Knight, aye. Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Nava? Nava, aye.
Thank you very much. That bill is out. Mr. Berryhill, you will now proceed to your second item of the day, item 9, AB 2469.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks.
Okay. Thanks again. And today I'm pleased to present with you AB 2469, which seeks to provide for a fair and equitable method of resolving disputes between the California Air Resource Board and those who are regulated by the board. This bill is not without precedent. Nearly every single state board or commission with regulatory authority has a formal dispute resolution process that allows both sides to present their case in a fair and just manner. Local air quality management districts likewise have administrative dispute resolution processes, including the Bay Area Air Quality Municipal District and the South Coast Air Quality District, whose process this legislation is based on. Neither this bill nor the hearing board it creates grant polluters any sort of exemptions to any of the rules or regulations administered by the Air Resource Board. It simply brings the ARB into line with what is being done at the local level and among other state boards. It will help to ensure that AB 32 is successfully and fairly implemented by cutting down on unnecessary litigation involving the ARB and regulated parties, thereby saving the state money by reducing additional burdens on both the court system as well as the executive branch's resources. Unfortunately, due to and I apologize for this, due to some staff turnover in my office, we were unable to submit an updated background sheet in time that reflects the amendments that we took in natural resources, where it received unanimous support. The bill has been simplified to simply require the ARB to establish a dispute resolution process. And I look forward to working with the committee on any amendments to help provide further clarification. So with that, I respectfully ask you for an aye vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Berryhill. Your first witness in support.
Thank you. My name is Bob Lucas. I'm here representing the California Council for Environmental and Economic Balance. We're the sponsors of the measure. This measure was brought forward in our desire to help secure the successful implementation of AB 32. The Air Resources Board right now and for the last several years has been working on a series of regulations to accomplish that purpose. These regulations are a departure from the normal type of regulations that we've seen come out of the Air Board in the past. They are far more technically oriented and detailed and resemble more the types of permits that are enforced by the local air districts. We are anticipating that once these regulations are actually finally enacted, and the bill is set for implementation, that there will be instances where clarifications are going to need to be made. And currently, the Air Board has no process to handle these types of issues. They are they're typically given to the executive officer for resolution. We think that the volume of these types of issues is going to overwhelm the executive officer and his office, and we think that at this point, since the nature of these regulations resembles very much what is happening at the air district level, that we institute a process similar to what's already in statute for the air districts. That's the purpose behind this bill. Now, granted, the process that was in the bill in its originally introduced form was rather detailed, as it needs to be for final enactment. And granted, as it was introduced, individuals came forward with questions about one or another aspect of that process. And we agreed in Committee on Natural Resources to take the detail out so that we could establish a shell that we could use to move forward with commitment to bring it back to all committees after we are able to receive consensus as to what this process might look like. I've brought forward an expert witness today, Mr. Ken Manister. He's a professor at Santa Clara Law School. I think you'll find him of interest today because he spent 17 years on the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Hearing Board, 11 years as its chairperson, if I may.
Thank you very much. Next witness in support.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chair and members. Kenneth Manister of Santa Clara University School of Law. Ordinarily, law professors are used to speaking in 50-minute segments. I realize that won't work, so I'll try to make it quick. As Mr. Lucas has mentioned, the model of foundation for this bill as originally introduced was the hearing board variance process that has been used extensively for at least 40 years in California law to deal with difficulties posed for individual pollution sources and trying to comply with applicable regulations. It seemed to me that in looking for a model on which to base a dispute resolution process related to ARV regulations, there certainly is an available, very well-established model in the variance process. You might say the wheel has already been invented by this legislature. It's been rolling along very well for decades, and it seems to me you have that available for you as a way to deal with these particular concerns. Variances are fundamentally temporary exemptions from air pollution laws and regulations, and they are, as I say, very well established. They serve, it seems to me, two main purposes, which I think are quite relevant to the concerns behind this bill. One is fairness. It's well established that if a diligent and responsible pollution source temporarily cannot comply with applicable pollution control requirements, if there are good reasons for the difficulty that that source has, it should not be subject to penalties, at least for a while. The second reason, and I just say as to that, it seems to me there is just simply a notion of fairness that an individual who's having trouble for reasons beyond its control ought to be given some leniency. It's a safety valve, and as I say, it's been in California law for at least 40 years. The second reason, which is somewhat more practical, is that the variance process creates cooperation and connection between the regulated sources and the regulators. And this is very well established. Indeed, it's recognized in the Health and Safety Code at one point, where it's spoken of as a cooperative effort by air district regulators and variance applicants. In other words, when a pollution source has a compliance problem, coming forward with the variance process creates a dialogue looking towards the best solution to the problem and looking toward the creation of a timetable toward compliance.
If you could please conclude your testimony.
Thank you. I guess the final point I would make is that this variance process is certainly one that the Air Resources Board is very familiar with, having issued variances in some circumstances itself in the past, and exercising a supervisory role and oversight role relative to the air districts. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other witnesses here in support of the measure?
Mike Rogie with California Manufacturers. We urge your yes vote. Thank you.
Others in support?
Good morning. Brenda Coleman here on behalf of the California Chamber of Commerce, and we are in strong support.
Thank you. Other witnesses here in support of the measure? Are the witnesses here in opposition to the measure? Seeing none, just to kick this off, I did have an opportunity, although yesterday, to speak with the supporters of the legislation, and I want to ask Mr. Berryhill a question I asked them, which is, let me frame this. Typically, I don't think that it's responsible for committee chairs to have bills emerge from committee which are not in a state where we can determine what they really are going to be. Sometimes there are needs to make exceptions to that rule. This is a bill which emerged from natural resources in a form that I do not consider ready for prime time.
Right.
But I said to the proponents yesterday that I, for myself, would support having the bill emerge from committee in this form with the firm commitment from the author of the bill that when content is added to this measure, it must return to this committee before it ever reaches the floor. Do I have your commitment to that?
Absolutely. Absolutely, Mr. Chair.
Okay. All right. Having said that, other questions or comments, members of the committee? Ms. Evans.
Is there language in the bill?
Yes.
I'm looking at it here. I'm trying to identify what language is actually in there. Everything I'm seeing is crossed out, except for the first statement in Section 1. Is that it?
As it was amended coming out of Natural Resources Committee, the detail was stricken from the bill, and the bill currently says that the Air Board shall develop such a process.
Okay. That's it then. No timeline?
No, there
I mean, other than the legislative one?
Well,
at this point?
AB 32 is due to be implemented in 2012. We would hope that we'd have a process like this certainly in place and operational before then.
Okay. Well, I'll just say I've done a lot of bills where I've had to, where I'm trying to create a new process, and usually it's in the judicial area, and gotten stakeholders together that have very diverse views, and it's taken usually more like a year and a half to 2 years to get anything agreed upon, details worked out, and actual language in the bill. And I mean, I would have looked at this with a skeptical eye anyway, had it had any language in it because of the controversy that is surrounding AB 32 at this point, and the attempts that are being made to overturn it. So just right there, that makes me a little bit squeamish about this. In addition to the fact that, you know, I appreciate the chair's attempt to get this out and to allow you some opportunity to create this process, but what will happen if it goes through the ordinary course is you'll arrive at something, you'll put some language in, and we'll have a very hurried discussion at the end of a very long session staring down the deadline. And we on the committee won't have a whole lot of opportunity to really analyze what's being done. So I'm feeling really uncomfortable about it because, in my opinion, and I'm not going to express an opinion one way or the other on what you're trying to do. It may be a good thing, it may not be. But the stakeholder process, and if it's going to have any credibility coming out the other end, you've got to have all the stakeholders involved, not just those that want to push this forward. That stakeholder process takes a very long time if it's going to be done right. So I'm uncomfortable. I appreciate what the chair wants to do, and I appreciate that the author wants to move it forward, but I feel really uncomfortable with that very short timeline.
Yeah, two things.
First, and I don't know who the stakeholders are and what process is being created to have stakeholder and public input.
Thank you, Ms. Evans. First, Mr. Berryhill, you are accepting, even at this moment, the clarifying amendments offered on page 4 of the committee analysis,
that is correct.
Now, those amendments do not fully address Ms. Evans' concerns, nor mine.
Right.
And I share Ms. Evans' skepticism about the way process often works in the legislature, and I will make very clear, if it wasn't clear earlier, if this bill can emerge in a form that makes its way through a process in this committee, the process will be meaningful and deliberative, because otherwise we risk making a major mistake in this area. So that frames my perspective. I may not respond fully to Ms. Evans' concerns. I appreciate the comments that she's made. Are there other members of the committee with questions or comments? Okay. All right. Mr. Berryhill, do you wish to close?
Yes, well, I appreciate Assemblymember Evans' comments as well. I'm still in my first term, so I'm sure I have a lot to learn from a number of you who have been here a while. We're just simply trying to be proactive and be ahead of the curve a little bit on the implementation of AB 32. And we are certainly committed to working with the stakeholders and to try to do the process and make sure that when we do come back, that we have a bill that you can all be very supportive of and feel very good about. So with that, I respectfully ask for your aye vote today.
Thank you, Mr. Berryhill. And I do want to say that, first, I appreciate the tone and the content of Mr. Berryhill's presentation today. It is definitely the case that members, especially as they gain more experience in the legislature, have heard it all before, right? Look forward to working with the stakeholders and so on. That language is invoked, and Ms. Evans is correct. Sometimes that language is invoked at a hearing where there was an opportunity, but not taken advantage of, to flesh things out, and ultimately there's a hearing off the floor in the middle of the last minutes of a session, and it takes a short time. This bill will have to be fully cooked and have the acquiescence of a broad collection of stakeholders, including the environmental community as well as the business advocates represented today, in order for the bill to have a chance in this committee when that subsequent deliberative discussion takes place.
I appreciate it.
All right. Having said that, is there a motion on the bill? Is there a second? All right. Call the roll.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Tran?
Aye.
Tran, aye. Brownlee? Evans? Hagman? Jones? Knight? Knight, aye. Swanson? Monning? Monning, aye. Nava? Nava, no.
Okay, that bill has 4 votes. It requires 2 more. It'll be on call.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Berryhill.
Appreciate
so
it.
now Mr. Ruskin is here on item number 14, AB 2733. And I'm going to ask Mr. Tran, if you wouldn't mind, if you could assume the chair of this discussion. I'll return in a moment. Thank you.
You need to. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Ruskin. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is AB 2733 concerning the sale of tobacco and cigarette and tobacco products. The Board of Equalization has the right to revoke or suspend licenses for the sale of cigarettes or tobacco products. When they do that, they recommend that the suspended or revoked licensee not display such products. They recommend that they not be given as gifts as well. But the problems that emerge are multiple. Because it's only recommended that the retailer, let's say, remove the display of these items, they often do not do that. And then a sale is made of an item, and the retailer's defense is, well, it wasn't really a sale. The employee did it. It was unintentional. They didn't understand. And so it's difficult to enforce that. In addition to that, oftentimes retailers use these products as gifts, not understanding that even as a gift, that they're using the cigarettes or tobacco products as a gift. They have value. They are used to leverage some ultimate return to the retailer. And so they are still using the cigarettes and tobacco products in a way they ought not. What this bill seeks to remedy these situations in the following way: to state specifically that there can no longer be a display of cigarettes and tobacco products when a license is suspended or revoked during the suspension period, or if revoked, that it clarifies the gifting to make it very clear that they cannot be used as gifts. And it also requires, thirdly, that the notice of suspension or revocation be posted. It also imposes a $1,000 penalty for violations. I think this is a common sense, good piece of legislation. I have witnesses here, and I ask for your aye vote.
Good morning.
Witnesses, please. Go ahead.
Good morning. My name is Cindy Wilson, Board of Equalization. Next to me is Richard Parrott, Administrator of the Board's Excise Taxes Division, and next to him, Gil Haas, Chief of the Board's Investigations Division. The Board of Equalization is the sponsor of this measure, which the Board unanimously voted to support. We're here to answer any questions you may have.
Any other witnesses in support? Seeing none. Witnesses in opposition? Also seeing none. Any questions from the committee members? I have one question, follow-up question from the GO committee, which this bill has heard. There was a concern brought up in GO, if you recall.
Yes, I do, and I have an answer to it.
And you made a promise to address that issue, and that is to basically, what do you do with merchandise or stocks that's that's going to have to be resold by the old distributor or the old retailer when the license is revoked.
Yeah.
Has that issue been resolved?
Well, I made a promise to look into it. And what I have discovered is that before revocation, the notice states the date the license is officially revoked, which is approximately 2 weeks from the date of the notice. This is done in part to provide a licensee time to sell off their remaining cigarette and tobacco products inventory. I understand that the same applies for suspensions. So there is already a window of time in which the retailer can sell off their inventory so they don't have to take a loss on it.
Very well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, is there a motion? We have a motion and a second. Would you like to close?
I ask for an aye vote.
Madam Secretary, please call the vote.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Tran?
Aye.
Tran, aye. Brownlee? Evans? Evans, aye. Hagman? Jones? Knight? Swanson? Monning? Nava? Nava, aye. Needs 2 more votes.
You will need 2 more votes.
Thank you.
Sir.
All right. We are now looking for an author, I believe. Oh, and Nava. Okay, so 2 members. I'll tell you what. Ms. Evans, although Mr. Nava is more eager, Ms. Evans actually is higher up on the agenda. So, yeah. I was looking for some reason to call on Ms. Evans first. Mr. Nava is the best I could do. All right. Ms. Evans, item 5, AB 1912.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the accommodation, and I'll be brief. This is a very non-controversial bill. It seeks to help the California beekeeping industry. We in California have the largest beekeeping industry of any state in the United States. Nearly 500,000 colonies of bees are operated by 400 commercial and semi-commercial beekeepers. Bees are absolutely necessary to agriculture. You cannot have agriculture without bees. That's why the birds and the bees are fundamental to everything.
Is it time for that talk, Ms. Evans?
Hopefully you've already had that, Mr. Farron.
I've been waiting about 50 years for that talk. Thank you. Go ahead.
And you're still waiting.
Yeah.
However, recently honeybees have been dying off at a very alarming rate, and they are subject to something called colony collapse disorder. Thank you. And I'll just be very brief. This bill would establish the California Apiary Research Commission, which would allow beekeepers to be proactive in conducting research and educational programs related to honeybees. And I would ask for your aye vote.
Witnesses in support.
Holly Fermini on behalf of the Association of State Beekeepers, and I just wanted to let the committee know that this has been in work in progress the last 2 years at the annual conferences. We've been working with in-state and out-of-state beekeepers, and they've struggled with being able to raise the appropriate funding to go towards some of these research projects. So this was a collective agreement amongst the industry to move forward in the best way to raise some funds for their efforts.
Thank you very much. Are the witnesses in opposition to the measure? Seeing none, questions or comments, members of the committee?
I have the same question, Mr. Chairman, as with the Nursery Commission, and I wonder what is the rationale behind, because is there already a trade association that deals with issues like this? Why do you need a commission, in other words?
That's exactly what I was just saying, is that the last 2 years at the annual conference amongst the trade associations conference, in-state and out-of-state beekeepers have collectively decided, because they've struggled with being able to raise the appropriate funding for some of these research projects. And there's a lot of beekeepers that are part of the association, some that aren't, but quite a few that are conducting business in California. And they, as a group, decided this was the best way to raise the appropriate funding they need for these projects.
So while there's a trade association, it is much more broad. This is specifically a research commission.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tran. We can kid around about this, but actually this is an extremely serious issue, not just in California, but internationally. And the collapse of colonies threatens a lot of what we take for granted every day throughout the entire known world. So having said that, there's a motion from someone that Mr. Tran is seconding. Very well. Call the roll.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Tran?
Aye.
Tran, aye. Brownlee? Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Hagman, Jones, Knight, Swanson, Monning, Nava. Nava, aye.
Okay. That bill has 4 votes. It requires 2 more. It'll be on call. Thank you, Ms. Evans. Mr. Nava. There'd be some poetry here if this were an action about birds, but I take it as not.
I actually thought it might be about apes. It was.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I'm here to present on Assembly Bill 2496. This bill will greatly enhance our statutes governing the Master Settlement Agreement and related statutes. In 1998, the Attorneys General of California and 45 other states agreed to settle more than 40 pending lawsuits with the nation's 4 major tobacco companies. The suits were brought to recover the public costs of treating smoking-related illnesses. The settlement is now known as the Master Settlement Agreement, or MSA. Under the MSA, the state is required to diligently enforce its smaller non-participating manufacturers, also referred to as NPMs, escrow statute, under which NPMs, tobacco manufacturers that are not a party to the MSA, are required to set aside funds to offset future liability to the state to the public cost of treating smoking-related illnesses. Rather than go on anymore, I think I'm going to ask for an aye vote. I do have witnesses here that are prepared to respond to questions.
Okay, very well. Do your witnesses wish to testify or merely be responsive?
Well, we'll introduce ourselves. My name is Mark LaForest. I'm the Director of Legislative Affairs from the Attorney General's Office. We have worked with stakeholders on this bill to remove opposition. We think we have a good bill that protects the state's interests under the MSA, and we ask for your aye vote. With me here is Bill Suhu from the Tobacco Litigation and Enforcement Unit within our office, and he'd be available for any technical questions.
Thank you. Other witnesses in support? Seeing none, witnesses in opposition? Seeing none, questions or comments from members of the committee?
I do have, again, this is a follow-up from GO. I did raise a concern in the Governmental Organization Committee and laid off on the bill pending some amendments being worked out in terms of small cigar makers. I mean, was that issue addressed?
Yeah, they're no longer in the legislation. We listened to what you had to say, made the amendments, took it out, so I'm looking forward to your yes vote today.
All right, thank you.
Are there others who wish to extract promises from Mr. Nava that he obviously will keep? Okay, and the questions or comments? Pardon me? No? All right, is there a motion on the bill? Is there a second? Second. All right, Mr. Nava, do you wish to close?
Ask for an aye vote.
Call the roll, please.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Tran?
Aye.
Tran, aye. Brownlee? Evans? Evans, aye. Hagman? Jones? Knight? Swanson? Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Nava?
Aye.
Nava, aye.
Okay, that bill needs one more vote. Mr. Nava will be on call. Thank you very much. Mr. Monning on item number 3, AB 1718.
Morning.
Mr. Monning, welcome.
I'd like to start by accepting the committee's suggested amendments to delete the Dispute Resolution Program Act fees by $5 and instead insert a blank. In other words, we're removing the dollar amount in this bill, and I'll address that, but we do accept the committee's amendment. The Dispute Resolution Program Act, referred to as DRPA, was enacted in 1986 and permits each county to make the independent decision to opt into the program through the adoption of a resolution. Once approved, each county designates an amount up to a maximum of $8 to be added onto each civil case filing. The $8 fee cap has not been increased since 1992. The Judicial Council evaluated the program in 1997 and found the program to be very successful in resolving disputes and resulting in high participant satisfaction. DRPA programs clear smaller cases from the court dockets and add to civil court efficiencies. DRPA was designed to support the provision of conciliation and mediation services to a wide cross-section of the population. Programs funded by DERPA work to settle disputes that divide neighbors, families, co-workers, and communities, including disputes that can escalate to the point of violence or community-wide strife. Conciliation and mediation is a process that brings people together to solve their disputes collaboratively, focusing on common interests rather than on adversity. It is typical for programs to find that over 80% of conciliations and mediations result in a resolution. AB 1718 will give county boards of supervisors the option of increasing the county's DERPA trust fund for each unlimited civil case first paper. I have with us today to testify Robin Siegel with the National Conflict Resolution Center, Mary Culbert, Director and Clinical Professor with the Loyola Law School Center for Conflict Resolution. Before turning to the witnesses, I would ask committee members for their aye vote on this. Again, we're accepting amendments that do not place any specific dollar amount. What we want to do with this bill is have a vehicle for consideration as we look at more universal court budgets to protect DERPA programs and to apply, where appropriate, an appropriate fee increase at the filing. So with that introduction, Mr. Chair, I'd like to present our witnesses.
Very well. First witness in support.
Mr. Chairman, members, Donna Brownsey with the California Dispute Resolution Council. We are the sponsors of the bill. I'm going to defer any testimony to the two expert witnesses that we have here who are actually associated with DERPA programs.
Good morning. My name is Mary Culbert, and I direct the Loyola Law School Center for Conflict Resolution. I'm here to just talk to you about what's going on in Los Angeles from a firsthand experience. I've been directing one of the programs there for the last 16 years. The program that I currently direct targets the monolingual Hispanic community. We also target the disability community, the elderly community, and the returning Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. So those are the folks that we're reaching out to who have so much conflict in their lives and so much stress build up that they really don't have anywhere to turn to. They don't have the resources to hire lawyers. They don't want to go into the legal system. Essentially, painting the picture about what's going on in Los Angeles County is, you know, that the population is about 10 million people. And they estimate that as many as 3 million or more, so about a third of the people are indigent or low income. Well, we help those folks. Additionally, we help them communicate about their conflicts. There's over 220 languages in Los Angeles County alone. So imagine the help that they need and the interpreters that you'd have to get in the court system to serve those folks and for those kinds of small disputes. Basically, 1/3 of the a 2006 statistic is 1/3 of the full-time workforce make under $25,000. As you know, in the last 2 years, you're lucky to have a job. So imagine supporting a family of 3 or 4 on less than $25,000 in Los Angeles County. As you know, these folks without resources, what happens is they get into these conflicts. So maybe they can't feed their kids. They lost their job. They don't speak their dominant language. It's not English. And basically, all of a sudden, their kid gets sick and they go to a hospital and they can't pay their bills. They've got creditors on their back. The tension and the pressure, there's so many anecdotal stories about the history of violence in these families because they don't know what to do when something like that just pushes it over the edge. And we're a place for them. They come to us, and the good news is that they're not resorting to violence this time. They're ready to sit down and talk. And part of what we do is we teach them how to speak to each other while we're helping them to resolve their conflicts. So we really feel we're transforming these communities and building peace. We don't have enough resources. People are operating on shoestring budgets, really low salaries. And thank you very much. And I respectfully request an aye vote on 1718.
Thank you for your testimony. Next witness in support.
Hello, my name is Robin Siegel, and I'm here on behalf of San Diego Mediation Center, which is the community division of National Conflict Resolution Center. We've been providing service in San Diego since 1983 and have been funded through the DRPA since 1989. We offer in our community program mediation for landlord-tenant cases, neighbor-neighbor, consumer-merchant, parent-teen, those with interpersonal relationships. Clients do not have attorneys typically in these cases. They don't have the resources and/or the type of case doesn't justify or warrant the cost of an attorney. They benefit from this as their access to justice. We receive referrals from the courts, police departments, schools, attorneys, other nonprofits. We work very cooperatively with the courts. We provide mediations at small claims court. We get referrals from judges handling civil harassment restraining orders, most of those neighbor-neighbor cases. Police departments refer a tremendous number of neighbor-neighbor cases to us, issues over parking noise, barking dogs, landscaping. The role that we play is to resolve conflict. When they come up with their own resolution, they're more likely to carry it out on their own and not need to go back to court or to resort to violence or needing law enforcement. We prevent conflict from escalating, and we know how serious that can be. We had a couple who was killed by a neighbor on Easter Sunday because of parking issues. We help disputing parties communicate better with each other, which builds capacity for them to resolve future disputes without having to rely again on the police or the courts. The portion of the filing fee allocated for ADR has not increased since 1992, 18 years ago, and the DRPA funds could, which only amount to 50% of our budgets, we would strongly request and respectfully request your aye vote on AB 1718.
Thank you for your testimony. Others in support? Are the witnesses here in opposition?
Oh, I'm here in support.
Okay, let's move forward, please. Support.
Yes, I definitely request an aye vote.
Please identify yourself for the record. Identify yourself for the record, please.
Your name. I'm Shar Edabar from Director of SEEDS Community Resolution Center in Alameda County.
Thank you.
Provide Sam. Thank you. And so one thing to add to what's already...
Well, actually, we have a policy of 2 witnesses in support on each side. If you just identify again your affiliation and whether you support or oppose the measure.
Okay, I support it then.
Thank you very much. Are there others here who support?
Yes, my name is Nina Sen, and I'm the president of the board for SEEDS Community Resolution in support of this bill.
Thank you very much. Others in support?
My name is Barbara Proctor. I'm the Director of Conflict Resolutions in Contra Costa, and I ask you to support this bill.
Thank you very much. Are there others who also support the measure?
Yes, my name is Ann Burrs. I'm the Manager of Mediation Programs from Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center in San Mateo County, and I strongly support this bill.
Thank you.
My name is David Usum. I'm the Community Mediation Program Manager at SEEDS Community Resolution Center in Alameda County, and I urge you to support the bill.
Thank you.
Addie Rosemare with the Peninsula Conflict Resolution Center in support.
Sandy Schartzer, and I'm a mediator with Marin County Mediation Services, and I urge you to support the bill.
Barbara Cobb, Marin County Mediation Services Manager, and I also urge you to support this bill.
My name is Kathy Ward. I'm the Court Services Program Manager at Recourse Mediation Services in Sonoma County, and I urge you to support the bill.
Kate Griffiths, Recourse Mediation Services. I urge you to support the bill.
Thank you. Are there others here in support of the measure? Okay, thank you very much for your testimony and support. Others in opposition to the measure?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Cliff Berg here on behalf of the California Association of Collectors. I do want to say I'm not here in opposition today. I want to thank the author for taking the amendments that he took. I want to look forward to working with him. My clients have told me what a worthwhile program this is in their opinion and how important it is. You know, we have concerns about the number of legislative proposals and budget proposals over the last few years that look to filing fees and other court-related fees to fund those programs given the current budget crisis and the impossible problem the state faces. So we look forward to working with the author. We are not opposed today. We recognize the need, but also wish the committee to be sensitive to the fact and the legislature to be sensitive to the fact that we can only raise fees so often before it creates problems for others and particular industries. And I know the author recognizes that, so look forward to working with him. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Others who wish to testify in opposition to the measure? Seeing none, are there questions or comments for the author from members of the committee? Seeing none, Mr. Monning, do you wish to close?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members. Again, I appreciate this opportunity to present this. I appreciate the work of the staff. I would just close by, again, underscoring while we're looking at this through the lens of a fee increase that we have removed in terms of a specific dollar amount to keep this open for conversation, there's tremendous savings when you have over 80% cases resolved outside of a court system. That saves the courts an unestimable amount of resources that would otherwise go to protracted litigation. Also, the ability to have emergency intervention in neighborhood disputes. We also had a tragedy in Monterey County where a neighbor dispute over parking of a car resulted in a shooting death of a couple. An esteemed lawyer in Monterey County, he and his wife were both shot to death by a neighbor. If they had had access to a neighborhood dispute program, which we have now established in Monterey County, those deaths might have been averted. So again, I want to thank those who have come today in support and encourage an aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Monning. Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Tran? Brownlee? Evans? Evans, aye. Hagman? Jones? Jones, aye. Knight? Swanson? Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Nava?
That bill has 4 votes, requires 2 more, and is on call. Thank you, Mr. Monning. All right, so now let us proceed to Ms. Lowenthal, who is here on item number 4, AB 1749. She is a joint author with Ms. Strickland, who appeared earlier. Ms. Lowenthal, welcome. So what are we going to do about what is the person's method by which she accepts the notion that we should do things to should be included? Okay. Ms. Lowenthal, good morning.
Morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. As my joint author joins us here, I want to thank you and your staff for working so closely with us on this bill.
Sure.
AB 1749 will give whistleblower protection to employees of California's judicial branch. The existing Whistleblower Protection Act covers about 200,000 state workers. They are empowered and encouraged to alert the public when its resources are being misused. The approximately 22,000 employees of the judicial branch, on the other hand, do not enjoy that same level of protection against retaliation. AB 1749 is an author-sponsored bill. It stems from our shared belief that it is in the interest of all Californians to uncover wasteful or inappropriate activities by public officials. We believe the best way to do that is to make it clear to these employees that the law will protect them from retaliation if they need to tell about improper activities or if they need to shine a light on unwise use of resources. This bill provides those protections and sets out an administrative process to ensure them. Although there is no opposition on file, we know that there are those in the trial courts that object to the expansion of these protections, and we're willing to work with them on their concerns. It is supported by AFSCME, the Labor Federation, court reporters, the Judicial Council, the San Diego Court Employees Association, SEIU, the Center for Judicial Excellence, and others. The committee analysis raises some very reasonable questions. Perhaps most importantly, that the bill as currently drafted may need some clarification as it relates to the immunity for judges. And if that is the chair's wish, we will take an amendment that makes it clear the immunity applies exclusively to adjudicative functions. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to my joint author, Assemblymember Strickland.
But before we proceed, I just want to be clear, Ms. Lowenthal, did you mean that the whistleblower statute would pertain to judges in their non-adjudicative roles?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Strickland, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Obviously, whistleblower protection is a very important tool for the accountability and transparency of public officials and institutions. By affording protection to judicial employees who may feel a duty to report questionable practices or inappropriate use of public dollars, we are enhancing the judicial branch's credibility, reputation, and capacity to serve their vital function in California. At last year's Accountability and Administrative Review Committee hearing, we investigated and examined the practices and budgeting decisions of the administrative offices of the courts, and I think really legitimized the need for this bill. AB 1749 is a bipartisan measure that will implement a layer of protection against potential waste and abuse in our co-equal branch of government. I would like to thank Assemblywoman Lowenthal and her staff for all of their work on this and their partnership in this effort, and I'd urge your support for the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there witnesses here in support of the measure?
Yes, Michelle Castro, the Service Employees International Union. We thank Assembly Members Lowenthal and Strickland for introducing this important measure. We ask for your aye vote. I'm going to defer the rest of my time to two members, one from Los Angeles, one from San Mateo Superior
Thank
Court.
you. Please.
Thank you.
Good morning. Arnella Sims, employee of the Los Angeles Superior Court. We ask for your support on this bill. We believe that this provides clear protection and strong protection for the employees of both the trial courts and the AOC. We need accountability and transparency in our judicial branch, and based on the many irregularities that have been brought forward during numerous forums, we believe that accountability and transparency, along with a vote on AB 2521, will bring that to the judiciary branch. So we ask that you support this whistleblower protection so that the employees can feel more free to bring irregularities to the attention of the authorities. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness in support.
Hello, my name is Annette Reese-Vitas. I'm a San Mateo County Superior Court employee, a resident of San Joaquin County, and a member of SEIU Local 521. I'm a fiscal specialist for the San Mateo County Superior Court. As a court employee, I personally witnessed firsthand the devastating effects of lack of oversight and accountability. Employees need to be free to make reports of suspected abuse or fraud and not having to worry they will lose their jobs or be retaliated against. When employees can do this, it increases oversight from within the court. I have worked with the court finance department for 14 years and 5 management analysts who either resigned or transferred out of the courts because they were in fear of being fired because they were asked to lie and change figures in the financial reports. Last year in San Mateo County courts approached the employees, and $3.89 million were in error. Employees in the finance department who knew that this was no way possible but would not come forward for fear of being dismissed. 30 days later, 4 finance employees were laid off and the finance director resigned. Not only do we need protection from AB 1749, the Whistleblower Protection Act, but AB 2521, independent court audits, outside from the AOC. Not only do we need protection on the inside for workers who want to speak out, but also need outside audits and oversight. So I'm here today urging you to support AB 1749 and AB 2521. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Other witnesses in support.
Tracy Kenny on behalf of the Judicial Council in support of the legislation. We too believe that it's important that our employees have accountability and transparency and are protected in their ability to come forth and report what they believe might be improper governmental activity going on in the branch. And we greatly appreciate the efforts of the author to work with us in crafting legislation that appropriately recognizes the independence of the branch while providing strong protection for our employees.
Thank you. Others in support.
Mr. Chair and members, Pat Moran with Aaron Reed and Associates, representing the Orange County Employees Association. We support the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in support.
Mr. Chair, Kathleen Russell with the Center for Judicial Excellence. We support the bill with the caveat that the exclusion around judges is clarified, as been discussed earlier.
Thank you. Others in support.
Connie Valentine, California Protective Parents Association, in strong support. We receive anonymous tips all the time. We have no way to direct the court employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Others in support.
Sarah Flox from the California Labor Federation, and we strongly support this bill.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Shane Gussman on behalf of the California Official Court Reporters Association and the International Federation of Professional and Technical Engineers, Local 21, in support.
Thank you. Thank you. By the way, Ms. Lowenthal, have you had an opportunity to confer with the Judges Association or other representatives of judges on this?
We are. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Mr. Belote can speak to that for me.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Belote.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Mike Belote on behalf of the California Judges Association. Obviously, we attended the same hearing that was referenced earlier. In theory, there is absolutely no concern about extending whistleblower protection to the judicial branch. When the bill was amended to
extend it to the courts. We have been talking about it. Members have raised concerns that the bill be appropriately crafted so that it very, very carefully avoids the adjudicative functions that judges perform. So if you look at improper governmental activity as defined in the government code, for example, it uses phrases like willful omission to perform duty. And judges are evaluating the bill in terms of making sure that it doesn't get to the adjudicative process. And we know and appreciate that the authors have worked on this. The committee staff has discussed it along with you in a very thoughtful way. We look forward to working with you all on that to make sure that it covers the administrative process and properly excludes the adjudicative function that judges perform.
Thank you, Mr. Black. And you heard the discussion between Ms. Lowenthal and myself. I happen to agree with the formulation that you've articulated. I think, and Ms. Lowenthal has stated that she agrees as well, and the bill will be amended to reflect the distinction that you've identified.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Are the witnesses here in opposition to the bill? Seeing none, members of the committee, questions or comments for either Ms. Lowenthal or Ms. Strickland? All right. And again, just to clarify, that amendment will be taken as the words of the amendment are not before us today, but it will be taken between the time that this bill leaves this committee and the time, does this go to appropriations next? And the time it goes to appropriations?
Yes.
Okay. Having said that, Ms. Lowenthal or Ms. Strickland, do you wish to close?
We respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Very gracefully done. Okay. Terrific. Is there a motion on the bill? It's been moved and seconded. Call the roll, please.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Tran? Aye. Tran, aye. Brownlee? Evans? Aye. Evans, aye. Hagman? Jones?
Aye.
Jones, aye. Knight? Swanson? Monning? Nava?
Chairman?
Yeah, Mr. Jones.
I punched up and then I looked down. Wonder if the authors are looking for co-authors.
Definitely.
Would love to be a co-author.
Thank
Great
you.
bill. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Ms. Evans also is interested.
Okay, very well. All right, so that bill has what, 4 votes, is that correct? And it requires 2 more. It's on call. Now we will proceed to Mr. Jones. Item number 1, AB 1652. Again, everyone has multiple commitments. The last bill that we have to hear this morning will be Mr. Hall's AB 1697. I know he has a concurrent commitment in another committee, but if he could come here in the next, well, I don't know, 5 minutes, that'd be great. Mr. Jones, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members. I'm here to present AB 1652, which is a bill that addresses safety at our wonderful ski and snowboard resorts. This bill comes out of a hearing held by this committee in November of 2008, which looked at the question of how we might better prevent injuries and fatalities at ski resorts and snowboard resorts. The bill is very modest in its scope. It simply requires that resorts prepare annual safety plans, which include information about signage and information about steps they're taking to make their resorts safer. I might note that many of these same safety plans are already required for those resorts operating on federal lands under an existing federal regulation. This would just make sure that we have conformity across the state as to this approach. The bill also requires monthly reporting about injuries and fatalities so that consumers, skiers and snowboarders have that information available to them so that they can make informed choices about where to ski and snowboard. And finally, the bill requires that kids under the age of 18 and resort employees wear helmets. There's a tremendous amount of science that indicates that wearing a helmet not only reduces the number of fatalities, but reduces the severity of injuries that occur to those who have accidents. Now, our bill takes the approach that we're not going to ticket people or ticket parents who don't have a helmet. We simply will provide that people should make sure their kids have helmets, and we ask the resorts to do that simply as they do currently by making sure that kids not get on a lift without a helmet. In addition, the bill has had widespread support, and we have some witnesses who would like to testify on behalf of the bill. I want to make one other note, and that is you're going to hear some witnesses in opposition who will share with you a parade of horribles with regard to the alleged erosion of the assumption of risk doctrine by this bill. Hearing that, we did add an amendment to this bill that we're taking in this committee, which makes clear that this bill in no way changes the very strong assumption of risk doctrine that essentially immunizes ski board resorts and snowboard resorts from liability. I can't know how we could make that clearer than putting the language in that we have put in, but we've done exactly that to allay those fears. With that, we have some witnesses who would like to testify on behalf of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Your first witness in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I'm Dan Gregory. I'm the founder and president of the California Ski and Snowboard Safety Organization, the sponsor of this bill, which is a child protection and consumer safety information bill. I'm a physician. I also have a master's degree in business from MIT, and I've been a senior executive of many large healthcare businesses. I've been a skier, and I certainly have enjoyed the wonderful recreational experience that snow sports provide. I'm also fully cognizant that snow sports are a very important part of the California economy. As a physician, I appreciate the importance of saving lives and reducing injuries. As a businessman, I know that a well-informed customer has great importance and value and is actually protective to both the customer and the business. It's difficult to read the newspaper or watch television today without learning about consumers' growing interest in safety. Consumers are increasingly expecting safety information about every product or service they purchase or use. As Mr. Jones stated at the hearing last year, we heard from a number of young parents and ski enthusiasts of all ages who testified to their concerns about the lack of or the inconsistent imposition of safety management practices at California ski resorts. Of particular note was their concern about the absence of publicly available information in the form of safety plans, as well as information about deaths and injuries at those resorts. Customers' concerns about safety will continue to grow. Lives will be needlessly lost and preventable injuries will continue if we don't take some reasonable actions to increase the focus on safety. AB 1652 will save lives and reduce injuries with no significant financial or operational cost to the resorts, the state, or the consumer. It imposes no additional collection of information burden on the resorts. They already collect the information that's requested. In fact, it could create a promotional opportunity and a competitive advantage for the resort. The provisions of AB 6052 are good public policy. They support good business practice, and I believe are good for the ski industry and certainly for the ski industry's customers. It is always the best policy to pay attention to the safety and well-being of your customers. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Next witness in support.
Mr. Chairman and members, thank you for allowing me to appear before you today. I'm Alana Lundgren, and here in support of AB 1652, and I'd like to tell you why. I've skied California ski mountains and many others since I was 5 years old. I skied competitively and recreationally. I was a longtime member of the Squaw Valley Ski Race Team, a four-time member of the U.S. Far West Junior Olympic Team, and ski cross competitor. I know firsthand the benefits of this bill. In particular, on one training day, I caught an edge, couldn't recover, and crashed into a tree. I suffered deep body bruises. My legs were black and blue for a week. I had a concussion, and the helmet that I was wearing, which was a mandatory piece of equipment for that type of training, had a 3-inch vertical crack on the forehead. I believe then, and what I was told by doctors, was that the helmet prevented serious head and brain injury. In addition to the helmet provision, I support California ski resorts to provide simple and consistent signage, basic safety plans, and to log serious injuries and death. This bill is needed and welcomed by many skiers and skiing families, and it would only enhance the enjoyable experiences that we have at California ski resorts. It's welcomed by many skiers, and thank you again for your courtesy and consideration.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Other witnesses here in support.
Mr. Chair, members, I'm Kathy Barankin with the California Coalition for Children's Safety and Health. We're strongly in support of the bill and want to express our condolences to Dr. Gregory for the death of his teenage daughter, which most likely would have been prevented had there been markers showing that she was going out of bounds. So we strongly urge your support of this measure.
Thank you for your testimony, and I do want to say, as the parent of a teenage daughter, I can't imagine, and I thoroughly appreciate what it took to be here today, so thank you. All right, next witness in support. Are the witnesses here in opposition? As the witnesses in opposition come forward, I'd like to ask Ms. Evans' indulgence, please. There is another committee which has concluded its business on which I need to vote. Just for a moment, if you would mind chairing for a second so I can go.
I'll chair the committee.
In a vote. And I will return in just a few moments, if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Evans. Yeah. Thank you very much. Sure. Feel the power. Yes, I know you know.
I prefer not to do it again. It's the reason I'm not chair. I'm sorry. Where were we, Mr. Jones?
You're taking testimony from the opposition, Madam Chair.
Anybody opposed to this bill?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mike Dillon, representing the California Ski Industry Association. I'll be brief. One of the concerns we have is putting safety plans on the internet. This is one that I have right here from Kirkwood Meadows. It's about 150 or more pages, and we question what purpose that serves by putting those on the internet. That has to do with blasting procedure, how helicopters come in, evacuations, how they sweep the hill at the end of the day, how they tie certain knots, and so forth. In these documents, the bill would require us to, among other things, describe how we're going to place signs marking natural hazards. That's rocks, trees, and so forth. How we guarantee the safe flow of skiers, which is a very judgmental thing. And then how we're going to, again, mark natural hazards. That could be a patch of ice. So we view these as an invitation to lawsuits, despite Mr. Jones' language that's in there, and we appreciate that being put in. But again, it's not going to stop frivolous lawsuits. It also requires that keys to this signage be placed at the top and bottom of every chairlift. That would be 64 signs for a big area like Squaw Valley. And right now we have signs all over the mountain. I have a picture here if you would like to see it. And then next would be the reporting of the injuries. We question what purpose is served by reporting injuries that include whether the person owned or rented their own ski equipment, what the trail rating was, whether it was calm, windy, or breezy that day. And finally, lastly, on the issue of helmets, we strongly support encourage helmet use. We are supporting Senator Yee's SB 880. Our major concern with this bill is if we see somebody who we think is under 18 not wearing a helmet, we have to go jerk the ticket right off their belt. That's like on the Bay Bridge with people coming by. The toll person would have to stop them because they're not wearing a seatbelt. Right now you can get tickets that are, what's the word I'm after, magnetized. You can get them at REI. When you go to the ski resort, you just go right through some metal gates and right to the chair. You may have 100 people lined up waiting to get on a 4-person chairlift, and then to have the operator have to stop the chair, ask for the person's ID or whatever, just doesn't make a lot of sense. Right now, 80% of the kids under 9 are wearing helmets. Almost 70% between 10 and 14 are wearing helmets. We have a goal of everybody wearing helmets by 2012. We're going to put up signs, put it on our trail maps, and put it on our website. So we're doing everything we can to have helmets. We just can't have the liability associated with this provision. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Good morning. Kim Stone with the Civil Justice Association of California. I should note we also don't oppose the helmet provisions of this bill or the Yee bill, but we do fear that many provisions of this bill will serve to undermine the traditional liability protections provided to ski resorts by the assumption of risk legal doctrine. What the assumption of risk doctrine means is that if you do something dangerous, you're not owed the same duty of care as people that don't. And there's a case that explains primary assumption of risk, which means that what you're doing is so dangerous that a potential defendant owes you no duty of care. And then there's something called secondary assumption of risk, which is that you're doing something somewhat dangerous and you still are owed a duty of care. And in the California case that explains this doctrine of assumption of risk, they frequently, and that involved a case involving touch football, where the plaintiff injured her finger while playing touch football, and the court said, well, you were playing touch football, and therefore you assumed the risk that some injury might occur, and so the defendant who caused your finger injury is going to win on summary judgment. And in reaching that result, they made several allusions to ski resorts and ski mountains and the inherently dangerous nature of skiing. And we fear that the provisions requiring a plan to mark every natural and man-made obstacle will provide sort of litigation footholds in order to sue. The nature of a ski resort is that conditions change. Moguls change, snow conditions change, weather conditions change, and the nature and danger of the run or the hill might change on a minute-to-minute basis, and it could be very difficult, if not impossible, to adequately mark every potential danger. And by having these requirements in the bill, as well as an explicit lawsuit against the ski resorts for failure to provide some disclosure requirements, those liability protections are completely undermined. Therefore, we oppose the bill and request your no vote.
Thank you.
Teresa Cook on behalf of the California Travel Industry Association, also respectfully opposed.
Thank you. Anybody else in opposition to the bill? All right. Questions, comments from the committee members? Mr. Jones, would you like to close?
I would. We have carefully crafted this bill so as not to impinge on the existing assumption of risk doctrine. To take the opponent's arguments at face value, anything this legislature does in any context with regard to a recreational sport that prevents injuries would undermine whatever existing liability standard there is. Thus, we should never try to make things safer, because, golly gee, some court might look at that and decide, gee, that would undermine the assumption of risk doctrine. Well, first of all, we're very clear in the face of the bill that nothing in this bill changes existing law as to that doctrine. I can't be any more clear, but if the industry would like clear language, we're happy to accept it. Unfortunately, what the industry has told me is there is no change to this bill that they would find acceptable, but we will continue reaching out. The point about concern about the one requirement that is in this bill, which is about putting something at the bottom and the top of the lifts to tell you what the signage is, we're happy to amend that to address their concern. But the only other requirement in this bill is you have to wear a helmet and you have to have a safety plan. Now, the content of the safety plan is up to them. They decide what a hazard is. They decide what natural hazards to mark or not mark. They decide how to mark them. There's nothing in this bill that dictates to them how they do those things. It just says, tell us what your plan is so consumers have a chance to look at it. And frankly, the internet is the way that most people are getting information. It's cost effective. We thought it would be the most cost effective way to communicate this information. If there's another way they'd like us to do it in the bill, we're happy to take that as well. So we are, again, notwithstanding their statement of unalterable opposition, happy to work with them to make changes to address legitimate concerns. But to suggest that this legislature can't take a very modest step to try to make things a little safer for people and to provide information to people so they can make informed choices, I think would tie the hands of this legislature in legislating in any consumer protection area. And I trust that this committee will reject that argument. I ask for your aye vote.
This is a difficult area to legislate in. I've looked at it myself before, having done some litigation in this area, and I like the idea. Excuse me. I like the idea of a safety plan and doing what we can to make an inherently hazardous activity much safer. But Mr. Jones, I have a question with respect to the plan itself. And if a ski resort fails to identify something that ends up being hazardous as a hazard, is there liability that attaches to the ski resort for having failed to do that?
No. No, the only actionable issue here is whether they've done the plan or not.
So there's no negligent failure to adopt a proper plan, in other words?
No, and if it would help to have affirmative language to that extent, we'd be happy to take it.
It might clarify things.
Okay. We'd be happy to work with the committee. I don't think we have the time to take the amendment here, but we'd be happy to work with the committee on affirmative language that makes clear that is not an issue in the bill.
Yeah, because I can see somebody claiming that there is negligence in the formation of the plan itself, and I don't think that's your intent.
No, it's not. It's the intent is just do a plan. To the extent you're identifying these things, identify them in the plan, and the only private action is to make sure you do a plan. We'd be happy to take additional language in the next committee that makes clear that there's no negligence that attaches vis-a-vis the failure to do the things identified in the plan.
Okay, so the plan itself would not be evidence of either a duty or failure to meet a duty, or
no, that's not our intent. We're happy to take additional language to clarify that.
All right. Do I have a motion and a second?
So moved. Second.
All right. We've got a motion and a second. Call the roll, please.
Fear, Tran?
No.
Tran, no. Brownlee, Evans?
With the author's proposed amendment later on, I will support it.
Thank you.
Evans, aye. Hagman? Jones?
Aye.
Jones, aye. Knight? Swanson? Swanson, aye. Monning? Monning, aye. Nava? Nava, aye.
Bill needs one more vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Next, and I believe last, we have Mr. Hall, item number 2, AB 1697. And the chair has returned.
Mr. Hall, welcome.
Mr. Chair, I must admit the sound of Noreen Evans' voice is
was a little better,
much
wasn't it?
more attractive.
It is, yeah. and Mr. Hall, I can only say I apologize for being me. All right. So, AB 1697, please.
Absolutely. Mr. Chair and members, AB 1697
Move the bill.
would make changes to the current statute regarding court security and associated fees. This bill is intended to address the manner in which court security is currently funded and speaks to the need to infuse additional funding into the system and provide more clarity into where the money goes. Court security services are provided by sheriffs and marshals for a number of public safety reasons, including their extensive peace officer training, jurisdiction over the inmates in local jails, the transport of inmates to and from jail to court proceedings, and sheriff and marshal personnel in court serving as bailiffs. AB 1697 highlights the critical need to create efficiencies in the court system and the court security funding. I'd like to commend the sheriffs of the state of California for being committed to providing the highest level of service and security to California courtrooms. There is absolutely no opposition to this measure. Here to answer any technical questions is Nick Warren, Wayne Billowitz, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hall. Witnesses in support.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. Nick Warner on behalf of the California State Sheriff's Association. Just wanted to briefly recognize and appreciate the work of Ms. Gershwin of your staff. I hope I didn't say that name too wrong, but the point still stands. I really appreciate you guys working with us, Mr. Liebert as well. The bill, as Mr. Hall says, removes the sunset, creates more sunshine, if you will, in that court security fund by creating that fund, and we urge your aye vote. Here to answer any questions.
Thank you. We'll also provide a pronunciation key to staff members' names later on, just for you, please. Mr. Billowit, do you wish to?
Lieutenant Wayne Billowit on behalf of Los Angeles County Sheriff Lee Baca in full support of the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Others in support?
Lieutenant Barbara.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Eager.
Okay. Yes. Lieutenant Barbara Ferguson, San Bernardino County Sheriff's Department's in support.
Since I'm from San Bernardino originally, I appreciate your testimony. Next witness in support.
Randy Perry with Aaron Reed and Associates on behalf of PORAC in support of the bill.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, my name is Jim Frayne, representing the Deputy Sheriffs of Sacramento, Orange County, Anaheim Police Association, California Coalition of Probation Organization, Fraternal Order of Police, Sacramento Chapter. We urge an aye vote on this. We increasingly have more violence in the courtroom. We need professionals there to make sure people aren't killed or injured. Thank you.
Thank you for your support. Others in support? Witnesses in opposition, please.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Jones?
I'd like to ask the author if I could be co-author of this great bill.
I'd be honored, absolutely.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
I'll move the bill, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Thank you. The bill has lots of support, please. Now, you're here, I think,
Not in
neither in
opposition.
opposition nor in support, correct?
That is correct. Donna
Okay.
Hershkowitz on behalf of the Judicial Council. The Judicial Council was opposed to prior versions of the bill. We just wanted to say that we really appreciate the amendments that the author has taken. The bill is entirely consistent with discussions that the Council's been having with Assembly Budget Committee staff, and we have removed our opposition.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Others in support, opposition, or somewhere in between? Okay. Are there questions or comments from members of the committee on the bill? Mr. Hall, do you wish to close?
Yes, thank you for your support, and I respectfully ask for your aye vote.
Call the roll, please.
Thank you.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Tran?
Not voting.
Brownlee? Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Hagman?
Mr. Hyman?
I'm coming back to that.
Okay.
Okay.
Jones? Jones, aye. Knight? Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Nava? Nava, aye.
That bill has 6 votes and is out.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Thank you.
So, colleagues, we're in the following position. Every bill has now been heard. Some bills are out and you can add on, but there are a number of bills that are on call, and the members who are here currently may not fulfill our full needs here. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Well, close enough, I think. All right. Okay. All right. So let's do this. Let's lift the call and see how far we get. On item 1, Mr. Jones, AB 1652. What's the vote count currently? Vote is 5-1. Open the roll for the absent members.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Brownlee? Hagman? Hagman, no. Knight? Knight, no.
That bill has 6 votes and is out. Item number 3, Mr. Monning, AB 1718. The vote count is 4-0. Chair voting aye. Call the absent members, please.
Brownlee? Hagman? Knight? Knight, no. Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Nava? Nava, aye.
That bill has sufficient votes and is out. Item number 4, AB 1749 by Ms. Lowenthal and Ms. Strickland. That bill has 4 votes. Chair voting aye. Open the roll for absent members, please.
Brownlee? Hagman? Hagman, aye. Knight? Knight, aye. Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye. Nava? Nava, aye.
That bill has sufficient votes and is out. Item number 5, AB 1912 by Ms. Evans. The vote count is 4-0. Chair voting aye. Open the roll for absent members, please.
Brownlee? Hagman? Hagman, no. Jones?
Jones, aye.
Jones, aye. Knight? Knight, no. Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye. Monning?
Aye.
Monning, aye.
That bill has sufficient votes and is out. Item number 8, AB 2047. The vote count is 5-2. Chair voting aye. Call absent members, please.
Brownlee? Hagman? Hagman, no. Jones? Item 8.
Okay. Item number 8. The vote count currently is
5-3.
is 5-3, and Ms. Brownlee hasn't had an opportunity to be here yet. Okay. AB 2469 by Mr. Berryhill. The vote count is
4-1.
4-1. Chair voting aye. Call the absent members, please.
Brownlee? Hagman? Hagman, aye. Jones? Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye.
That bill has sufficient votes and is out. Item number 10, AB 2496 by Mr. Nava. That vote count is 5-0. Chair voting aye. Open the roll, please, for absent members.
Brownlee? Hagman? Jones? Knight?
Not posted up here. Jones, aye.
Jones, aye. Knight? Knight, no. Swanson?
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, aye.
That bill has sufficient votes and is out. Item number 11, AB 2521 by Mr. Tirico, requires a motion in addition to a vote. Is there a motion on the bill?
So moved.
It's been moved. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Open the roll, please.
Fear?
Aye.
Fear, aye. Tran?
Number 11, AB 2521.
Tran, aye. Brownlee? Evans?
Aye.
Evans, aye. Hagman? Hagman, I. Jones.
Aye.
Jones, I. Knight. Knight, I. Swanson.
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, I. Monning.
Aye.
Monning, I. Nava. Nava, I.
Okay, that bill has sufficient votes and is out. Item number 14 is the last measure in which we have not voted, AB 2733. That vote count is 4-0. Chair voting aye. Call the absent members, please.
Brownlee. Hagman. Hagman, I. Jones.
Jones, aye.
Jones, I. Knight. Swanson.
Swanson, aye.
Swanson, I. Monning.
Aye.
Monning, I.
Okay, so the only measure that remains on call is item number 8. If I know Ms. Brownlee has multiple competing commitments, but she is on her way. If members wish to add on in the meantime to measures they have not yet voted on, this is a good time to do that, and we will lift the call on item 8 when Ms. Brownlee arrives.
Am I?
Oh, excuse me?
Chairman, I think I was absent on item 8. Can you lift the call so I can at least add on at this time?
Oh, yes, fair enough. Okay. Let's lift the call. Let's lift the call on item 8, AB 2047.
Brownlee. Jones.
Jones, aye.
Jones, I.
And that bill has sufficient votes and is out. So at this juncture, members can simply add on as they wish. Seeing no other business before this committee, with the exception for members adding on to measures they haven't had a chance to vote on, we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. Oh, you're just wonderful. The Judiciary Committee is going to reconvene at 1 p.m. in room 127 for the purpose of conducting an oversight hearing regarding the crisis in funding among legal services providers.